As Carol said, welcome to the event tonight. My first exposure to our first guest here that I'd introduce is Christina Nolan. My first exposure to Christina was I was a newly appointed police chief, and I was at a seminar with the chiefs and the Sheriff's Association. And Christina had just gotten her appointment as the U.S. Attorney in the state of Vermont. And being the kind of guy I am, I speak what I think, and I said to her, I said, you know, I'm from down in the southern part of the state, and believe it or not, we see more UFOs down there than we do federal representatives and federal people. And she said to me, she said, well, I can tell you one thing, that's going to change. And, you know, I thought, yeah, okay, well, we'll see. And I have to tell you, it did change. And it changed in a big way. And it changed in a manner in which she did everything that she told the chiefs and the sheriffs that day that she was going to do. She made it a point to make her way around the state to visit each and all the police departments, sheriff's agencies, and listen to our concerns. And actually, it was so refreshing to actually see somebody carry through with what they say that they're going to do. And she made a significant difference in at least Manchester Police Department's working relationship and connectivity at the federal level. And I was joking with her, but I was also very serious at the time. She hadn't been in office too long when we had people here in Manchester that were up to illegal things, drug dealing and stuff like that, and the rumblings were on the street were that they needed to be careful because they had this federal prosecutor or federal lawyer out of the U.S. Attorney's Office that was going to come after them. It's been a long time, folks, since I heard that. It's been a long time since people actually feared the law. And Christina did that. And when I saw that she was running for the U.S. Senate, I sent her an email and said, hey, if you do this, let me know. I want to help you out. And with that, you know, I think that she is a perfect person to fill that role. She's the type of person that I can vouch for that carries through what she says. And with that, I will go to Ericka and Redic, and I've known her for a while. It goes back to probably 4 or 5 years ago in the political arena. And I'll tell you, you got two feisty women here. And I'm afraid that if they get elected in Washington, things aren't going to go like they have been going, because I don't picture these two playing the norm when it comes to politics. I see both of them as very dedicated servants that will follow through with what they tell you. And although I may not always agree with every aspect of where people lie on things, I do say that these folks, based on my knowledge and my, I would call friendship with them, they are stand-up people that will do Vermonters well in Washington. Christina, Ericka, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Am I first? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Chief, and thank you, Carol, and thank you for that warm welcome. It was a pleasure working with you, and I'm happy I was able to follow through on what I told you, because maybe you wouldn't be here today if I didn't. So, and thank you, Carol, for organizing this event, and I am thrilled with the attendance tonight, because this is, every time I get to talk to a new person, it matters. And I want you all to come out and vote in August and November for me. So I was told I had 20 minutes. That sounds dangerous, but I'm gonna Somebody give me the this if it's getting to be too long. Ericka, you included. I am a U.S. Senate candidate. I am a Republican U.S. Senate candidate, and I will tell you I am an independent-minded Republican. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by that in a moment. I'm also a lifelong Vermonter. I was born and raised in Vermont. I grew up on Woods Hollow Road in Westford, a dirt road, and I know all about mud season, let me tell you. I'm the oldest of 4 kids in my parents' marriage, and then my dad had 3 more kids after they got divorced, so I'm the oldest of 7. I grew up in a working class family. My mom was a homemaker before the divorce, and then after the divorce, she was a music teacher, and my dad was a carpenter. And I live in Burlington now with my partner Jill, who some of you have met, of 16 years. In all my accomplishments, which people tell me I have some, my proudest accomplishment is Jill, and our relationship. So I'm proud that she's with me here tonight. I am the former U.S. Attorney for Vermont. I was appointed by President Trump, but I was recommended by Senator Leahy and Governor Scott, and Congressman Welch, who will be my opponent in November, attended and spoke at my swearing in. And every single senator in both parties voted to confirm me. So how's that for bipartisanship? We can do it. We can do it. And I'm running to be the first, as we've heard a lot about, Vermont's never sent a woman to Congress. And we are the only state in the country never to send a woman to Congress. And guess what? We're going to answer that call right here in this room. And it doesn't need to be just one woman, okay? We don't have a quota of one woman in Vermont, okay? It can be more than one. And I'm going to be the first female United States Senator, just as I was our first female United States Attorney. My opponent, Congressman Welch, is a 75-year-old white man. Now, there's not a thing wrong in the world with being a 75-year-old white man if you're getting something done. But Congressman Welch has been in politics for 40 years. He won his first statewide office in 1980 when I was 1 year old. And he's been in Washington for 15 years in the House of Representatives. Now he wants to go over to the Senate at age 75. And I'm sorry, but he hasn't gotten anything done other than be a rubber stamp for the extreme left wing of his party, and he's only gotten more and more and more extreme over the years. And I don't think we need a 75-year-old junior senator. I think we need a new generation of leadership in Washington. I think we need fresh perspective. I don't think that the people who have been in Washington, like Congressman Welch, way out on the extremes for 15 years are going to be part of the solution. We need new energy, we need fresh perspective, we need common sense, we need the Vermont values of civility and hard work, and I will bring those to Washington. And why am I running? Very simply, because I love this state. It's a blessing to have been born here and to have been raised in Vermont, to call myself a Vermonter, and I want to give back. I wanted to give back as U.S. Attorney, I want to give back as your next United States Senator, and I want to serve you. What am I going to do in Washington? Let me talk about one thing I want to do first in Washington, then I'm going to come back to some other priorities. The first thing I want to do is I want to change the place. It's broken and dysfunctional, and it's worse than ever before. And the people who are part of the problem, like Congressman Welch, are not going to be part of the solution. And what we need to do is elect people like me who aren't going to work for the party. They're going to work for you. There are extreme elements in both parties who are not getting things done for you. I will go to Washington. I am a Republican, but I will always do the right thing. I will not work for a political party or for any kind of talking points or any kind of extreme agenda. I will work for you. Compromise is not a dirty word. If you're getting something done that's good for people, compromise is a good thing. Bipartisanship is not a dirty word if you're getting something done that's good for people. And I believe that we can restore that kind of politics in Washington when we elect principled people who are working for the people they are elected to serve. I'll accept a good idea, no matter which side of the aisle it comes on, and I'm going to propose good ideas. But I'm just going to tell you, if we re-elect Congressman Welch, which we just can't do because the stakes are too high, the country needs help so badly. If you elect him, you will have an extreme, far-left politician who caucuses with AOC, who caucuses with the Progressive Caucus, and he will be a rubber stamp for that agenda, and that's what he'll do. Somebody who's part of the dysfunction is not going to be part of the solution. And let me also just say, raise your hand if you're happy with the status quo and the way things are going in this country. You're happy? Okay, we got one. If you're happy with, but I'm not, and I don't think, and that doesn't mean I'm not hopeful. I'm hopeful, but I'm not happy with the way some things are going, like the rising violent crime here in Vermont and across the country. I'm not happy with the huge rise in overdose deaths since I left the U.S. Attorney position. Here in Vermont, they're up at a faster pace than anywhere in the country. I'm not happy with inflation. I'm not happy with the workforce crisis. I'm not happy with the supply chain crisis, and on and on. I'm not happy with the housing crisis. So if you like the way things are going, you have your candidate, Congressman Welch, a 15-year elite career establishment politician, or you can vote for me and elect change and some common sense solutions. And I'm going to tell you, I can get things done. I can get things done. I can achieve positive results for Vermonters. And I can tell you that because I'm going to run on my record as U.S. Attorney. I've already talked to you about how I had bipartisan support as U.S. Attorney. I had bipartisan support at the highest levels. The governor, Senator Leahy, appointment by President Trump, and then every member of the Senate voted to confirm me. And I'm going to win crossover voters in November because everyone in all parties, except maybe not on the extreme left, they're tired of politics as usual and policy making that is utterly lacking in common sense. I'm going to win this race for that reason. And Democrats are telling me all across the state that they're going to vote for me. And independents, for sure. We're going to do so well with independents. But I want to talk about my accomplishments, and I'm going to say what an accomplishment is not. Being in Washington for 15 years is not an accomplishment. Voting is not an accomplishment. It may be part of your record, but it's not a concrete accomplishment. Tweeting is not an accomplishment. And standing next to somebody at a podium is not an accomplishment. Neither is standing at a podium an accomplishment. And I think Congressman Welch should take note of that. What did I do as U.S. Attorney that I can point to that are concrete results for Vermonters? And the reason I can tell you I can get results for you in Washington, because I worked with people in all parties every day to get these results. Number one, increased federal charges against drug dealers and dangerous offenders by 51% during my time as U.S. Attorney, and that made communities safer. And guess what also happened during my time as U.S. Attorney? Overdose deaths came down for the first time ever in Vermont. In 2019, they came down. And that is not all due to me, because I credit our drug treatment and prevention communities and recovery communities hugely. But part of it is because we enforced the law and took dangerous offenders out of the communities and took drugs out of the communities, and enforcing the law and accountability is part of what makes communities safer. I also, though, worked really hard to support our treatment and prevention communities. I'm really proud of work I did with a man that I had prosecuted. He's a wonderful person, but he was deeply addicted to opioids when he committed some serious federal crimes. And when I was an assistant U.S. attorney, a federal prosecutor, before I became U.S. attorney, I prosecuted this man for very serious gun and drug trafficking crimes he committed, but that were fueled by his addiction. He immediately pled guilty. He cooperated against people higher up the drug trafficking organization, and he did some jail time. He is now 6 years sober. He sends me pictures of his son almost, maybe 3 times a week. He's married, and he and I made a documentary when I became U.S. attorney when we were friends. I mean, imagine having a good friend be the person you prosecuted. But it happened, and we made a documentary about his life and his recovery when I was U.S. attorney. And we took it to all communities, to schools, and we screened it at schools with the goal of the message of hope. There's so much despair in this drug crisis, but there are messages of hope. And by the way, there's one sitting right here next to you. I hope you don't mind me pointing that out. There are messages of hope, and we've got to get to people with a message of prevention. No matter what age you are, but especially children, it's not worth giving up your future and your freedom by taking that first risk. And so not only did we charge more people, the people who are profiting from the suffering of others, we worked the prevention, the demand reduction side too. Did a bunch of work to take guns out of the hands of criminals in Vermont. We did these surges of arrests where we focused on taking guns out of the hands of people who had no business possessing them, criminals. There was one operation we did on Interstate 91 that led to the seizure of 128 firearms and 6,000 rounds of ammunition. And we did some of these surges in southern Vermont. I never forgot southern Vermont as U.S. Attorney, and I will never forget the South as United States Senator. It's so important that we get resources to southern Vermont. And I do believe that we have enough gun laws on the books, existing gun laws, that we can charge and enforce efficiently and effectively to make our communities safer. We want to take guns out of the hands of criminals using existing gun laws, and we want to facilitate gun ownership, responsible gun ownership by the law-abiding. That's the balance I think we should strike. I think we have all the gun laws we need right now. We got to focus on mental health, though, too, because that's a big part of violent crime. Women's issues, we did so much to address crime that disproportionately affects female victims, increased federal charges against domestic violence offenders. There's all kinds of gun laws on the books you can use to charge brutal domestic violence offenders. Opened a recovery house for victims of human trafficking, working with Jenna's Promise and other stakeholders, a nonprofit called Jenna's Promise. So recovery house for women who have suffered from, been the victims of human trafficking, charged one of the most noteworthy human trafficking cases in the history of the country. Charged as an assistant U.S. attorney and as U.S. attorney, countless child exploitation cases. So many in these cases, so often the victims are children of all ages. And so very proud of the work we did to jail and hold accountable those who prey on the most innocent and vulnerable in our communities, our future, our children. Convicted Purdue Pharma. Pharmaceutical giant. The little U.S. Attorney's Office in Vermont convicted Purdue Pharma for its disgusting role in illegally selling oxycodone and putting profits over people and patients. So much of what Purdue did led to the opioid crisis in Vermont and across the country. Congressman Welch complains about pharmaceutical companies all the time. I actually managed the case that led to their conviction. The conviction of that company. So it's important to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And that company is out of business, and we laid down a marker for greedy companies, whether it be big tech, big pharma, big anything, who put profits over people. I'm very proud of that work, and that was an important step in addressing the opioid crisis too. EB-5 scandal in the Northeast Kingdom, does everybody know what that is? When I became U.S. Attorney, they said, Christina, that's too big. You can't. You don't have the resources. They said the same thing about Purdue. I said, of course we do. We're going to walk and chew gum. We're going to do the drug cases in the communities, and we're going to take down the corporate crooks and the white-collar fraudsters as well. We charged everybody involved in that scandal that we could. They've all pled guilty, and they're going to jail. Many other great cases where we recovered hundreds of millions of dollars for taxpayers going against companies who have ripped off federal programs. And there's a ton of that going on. And we did a ton of that work out of the little U.S. Attorney's Office in Vermont. And when I get to Washington, I'm going to find so many more billions of dollars to save for you, because there is so much waste, there's so much fraud, there's so much abuse, and I'm going to be a model for ethics and transparency in government, because a U.S. attorney knows there's nothing more important than ethics. If you don't have your ethics, you have nothing. And I will never lose sight of the importance of that. As U.S. attorney, I also got resources, federal resources to the office. The office grew in a historic way. When I was U.S. attorney, our little office saw growth, historic growth that it had never seen before, and that's because people trusted me with more resources. And I'm going to get more resources to Vermont. One of the things Senator Leahy did very well was got resources to Vermont. And I can build seniority. It's just a matter of simple biology. I can build seniority in the Senate. Congressman Welch, if he had stayed in the House of Representatives, would be able to do more for Vermont because he has seniority there. He's not going to be able to build seniority. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact. And again, I don't think we need a 75-year-old junior senator for that reason. I will get resources to Vermont for funding the police, cleaning up Lake Champlain, and more. Now, what are my priorities? How am I doing on time? Keep going? Okay. Okay. I'm going to be as efficient as possible. Just like we should efficiently and effectively enforce the gun laws, I'm going to be as efficient as I can be. My number one goal in Washington, my number one priority is public safety. Public safety is the first job of government, public safety and crime reduction. Nothing else can be accomplished if you, your families, and your loved ones are not safe. And violent crime is seriously on the rise in this country and in Vermont. We had 14 shootings in in Burlington, in 2021. That is a frightening number. We've already had 6 or more shooting incidents in Burlington this year, but all across the country, we have seen a spike in violent crime, 21,500 homicides in 2020. That number is going to be higher, I believe, in 2021. And you know what this coincides with? The senseless movement to defund the police. We must, which I am so opposed to, we must fully fund and support our police. Fully fund and support our police. They need more funding, not defunding. Congressman Welch very tragically voted 3 times to defund the police in 3 different ways. He voted twice to get rid of their qualified immunity, while he, as a government official, enjoys qualified immunity for himself. He didn't vote to get rid of it for himself, only for the police. And what that means is the police can be sued in their personal capacity for any decision, any split-second decision they make every day as they're working to keep us safer, which would drive them all out of the profession and potentially bankrupt the ones who dared to stay. We already have a recruitment and retention crisis in Vermont of epic proportions. The Vermont State Police is way down on capacity. They're telling the locals, please don't call us unless you've exhausted every other option. When I was U.S. Attorney, that was unheard of. The state police always wanted to support the local police, but they don't have enough people anymore. And this is true all across Vermont. The Burlington police, I feel so sorry for them. Their ranks are so depleted, I don't even want to say what the number is because I don't want it getting out to people who would exploit the situation. But Congressman Welch voted twice to get rid of their qualified immunity while he would keep it, and he voted no to a resolution that would have condemned calls to abolish the police and defund the police. That's the same thing as supporting calls to defund the police and abolish the police. That is leadership disqualifying. You shouldn't be in the United States Congress if you're voting to defund the police. That doesn't mean we don't prosecute the bad police actors, just as we would prosecute. I've unfortunately had cases of teachers who exploited children, doctors who engaged in sexual misconduct. We prosecute the bad actors, but we support the profession. And the police are putting themselves on the line every day for us, and their families don't know if they're coming home. So Congressman Welch and I couldn't be more different on this issue. He's soft on crime, and he's for defunding the police. I don't care what he says when he's in Vermont visiting the police stations and shaking hands. You've gotta watch what he does in Washington. I can shake hands, Ericka can shake hands, but we will walk the walk, I'll tell you that. So that's one thing. And I'm gonna get funding to police. I will help, I know I can help get that done. Now, overdose deaths. People stopped talking about this over the last couple of years, and I don't understand why. Overdose deaths are on the rise all over the country, and that means 100,000 people died in a 1-year period, which is more than we've ever seen over the last couple of years. That's not just, there's the tragic loss of life, but this is also destroying families and communities. I can't tell you how many parents have come up to me and they say, we don't know how to go on because we can't get over the loss of this person. And I'm going to focus on it because I think we've lost sight of it. And part of the reason this is happening is we've defunded the police, so we have less police to investigate drug traffickers. I can't tell you how many drug cases that even go up to the federal level start with the local police. The chief knows this. When you don't have a fully staffed local police, or the Vermont State Police, which also does drug cases, you're not going to catch the drug traffickers. So they're really running quite free here in Vermont right now due to people like Congressman Welch who support defunding. So we're going to fund the police. That's going to help with the overdose problem. We're going to get grant funding to our treatment and prevention communities. And here's what we're also going to do. We're going to secure the southern border. Because one of the problems that's not talked enough about on the southern border is the fentanyl that's pouring over it in quantities the likes of which we have never seen before. Quantities that can kill millions of people. It's all coming over the border from Mexico. China's sending some of the precursor chemicals that the cartels are using to manufacture it. And so we have all kinds of problems on the border. Illegal entry, people who are profiting from desperate people and taking every cent they have to smuggle them across the desert, which is so dangerous for them. We can't have people coming to the country illegally. Plain and simple, we need to streamline our legal immigration system. I would love to be part of a bipartisan coalition that helps streamline our legal immigration system because we want people coming to America. It enriches us. My grandmother came through Ellis Island. We want people coming to this country legally. But when Border Patrol is overrun by illegal crossings, they are less capable of catching the fentanyl. So this is one of the reasons we're seeing a rise in overdose deaths, because there is no border security policy right now. And I will get that border secured. I'm telling you, we will get it done. And how are we going to do it? We're going to fund the Border Patrol. If they need more people in certain places, they should get it. They should be supported. And we should listen to the experts on the border. We should listen to the Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection. And we should not lift Title 42. This is not the time to be lifting one of the few tools we have to streamline the process of returning people who are crossing illegally. And you know, there are 10 Democratic senators who agree with what I'm saying. They've come out and agreed with what I'm saying. Congressman Welch, he's fine with lifting that. I don't know what he thinks about the border. I don't think, so far as I can tell, he doesn't think it's a problem. But I do, and I'm gonna approach this with a sense of urgency. By the way, we gotta keep an eye on the northern border too. As U.S. Attorney, I was in charge of efforts to secure the northern border. We increased charges on the northern border, and we slowed the illegal trafficking measurably coming through Vermont. When I got done as U.S. Attorney, the Border Patrol put a flag up outside their station with my name on it, and I was so truly touched by that because they said they never had a better friend at the U.S. Attorney's office, and I still have that flag framed at my house. I'm getting there. Inflation, what do you think, 2 minutes? 2 more? Okay, inflation. Congressman Welch supported a $5 trillion spending bill in a time of record inflation. Government overspending is what causes inflation. We cannot have these omnibus bills loaded up with everything everyone ever wanted. Both parties are guilty of these bills being too big because we can't do it anymore because the overspending is hurting people. People who can barely make their bills cannot afford the prices at the pump, the cost of groceries, and every other rising cost like rent. Seniors cannot afford the increase in Medicare Part B and D premiums that they're seeing. They're on fixed incomes. Again, Congressman Welch would exacerbate the problem with his overspending. I would spend only to the point of sensibly helping smaller bills, not to the point of hurting. We got to get the workforce back to work. We've got to manage life with the virus and move forward. Businesses need to be open, not closed, adding jobs, not subtracting them. And we need children in school, not stuck at home with their parents ever again. And we need them to be in school without masks and to have their childhood back. But we need people working, and we need to incentivize work so our small businesses, which are the lifeblood of our economy, can grow and create jobs. And finally, I will be strong, 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 peace through strength on national defense and take care of the veterans. The veterans are like the police. They deserve to be prioritized. I will always take care of them and project American strength abroad. The botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, you saw what happened next, Putin invading Ukraine and so forth. America's got to be strong and proactive, not reactive when it comes to national defense. I would have been more proactive about what was going on in Ukraine. But look, there are things we need to address, but there's hope because I'm going to win this Senate seat. We're going to build a new kind of politics in Washington that serves people and that gets things done for you. Instead of partisan gridlock and rancor, which is wearing everybody out, we're going to find solutions, and we're not going to elect another extremist who would defund the police and every other kind of extreme policy. So vote for me in August, because there is a primary. I want you to come out and vote for me, and then in November, and thank you for your time.
Ditto, good night. No, that was really good. You took a bunch of my talking points.
You'll say it better. You'll say it better. Done it before.
Can you guys hear me okay if I stand up like this? Yes. These kinds of things do take a tremendous amount of effort, and so we really do appreciate the press being here and having the opportunity to speak to y'all. My name is Ericka Redic. I'm running for the United States House of Representatives, and oh gosh, I was listening to you talk, and I was thinking, what a foolish mistake it was for the Biden administration to fire Christina from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Can we agree on that? I mean, I'm really glad that you're running for senator. We really need some sanity restored to Washington. But that something is wrong when you've got a prosecuting attorney who's actually making everyone's life better, and she gets fired anyway, right? I think that's some evidence that maybe there's a problem in Washington and we need to do something about it. If the people who are getting things done and making your lives better are the ones who are rejected and asked to leave, there's something wrong in Washington. And we really do have an opportunity to make some changes and to do something different. And so I'm really excited about that. Born and raised in Vermont, I feel very fortunate to have grown up on a almost dirt road. It was not a dirt road, but we didn't have sidewalks. In Milton, Vermont, and I went to high school at BFA St. Albans, and I tell people all the time how grateful I am to have had an upbringing in a small town where we were safe, and we could run and we could play, and it was fine. We went to school, we learned reading, writing, and arithmetic, and then we came home to our parents, we chopped wood, we picked vegetables out of the garden, and we lived our lives, and it was simple. And I'm so, so grateful for that. I graduated from Champlain College with a bachelor's degree in accounting and have been an accountant for much of the last 20 years of my life. So, unlike my opponents on the Democratic side, I have spent the majority of my time and energy in business. I am a small business owner myself. I am also a landlord in Burlington. The groans. Usually there's a collective groan when I say that. And I know what it takes and what it looks like to be successful as an entrepreneur, as a housing provider, as a renter. I have been there. I have a small accounting firm, but I work with, I've worked with hundreds over the years, but right now we have 30 monthly active clients that we do their bookkeeping, we do small business consulting. I've helped numerous businesses who are on the verge of bankruptcy pull themselves out of it. I have helped find fraud that was being committed by employees and discovered these things and helped put businesses back on track. And I'll do the same thing in Washington, because I can tell you that one thing that you do learn when you're an accountant is how to do math. And it doesn't seem like our current legislators know how to do that. Many of them, three of the Democrats currently hold office in Montpelier now. The fourth was a Democrat operative in Washington and in other places. So these are establishment people, especially the three Democrats, our lieutenant governor, a senator, two senators, right? They're both senators, right? Becca and Ron? Yeah. Is your life better off for them being in Montpelier? Are your taxes lower? Is Vermont more affordable? How's that grocery bill doing? How's your kids' education? Are they reading at proficiency, whatever grade level they are? Are they able to get into a good college? Because what I know and what I've experienced and what I hear from Vermonters is the answer is no, those things are not better. They're hurting more and more and more. Our legislators in Montpelier are more concerned with meeting a goal, arbitrary goals, right? We got to reduce our carbon footprint by 40% in 7 years in a state that's winter 9 months out of the year, where we need home heating oil. Does everybody know that the clean heat standard was defeated by veto, the governor's veto? Do you know what that bill was? Does everybody know? It was literally a bill that said, you fuel dealers have to help reduce carbon emissions in Vermont. You have to convince your customers to start switching to electric. So you have to put yourself out of business by telling your customers that they need to switch to electric furnaces and all of that stuff. And oh, by the way, if you don't do that, we're gonna fine you and use that money to advertise to your customers that they need to switch to electricity and put you out of business. When there is absolutely no mechanism and no infrastructure to even think about switching to electric anything. We don't produce enough power. And they have this goal in mind, and they do not care who they steamroll and who they have to push over to get there. And that concerns me, because now they want the opportunity to go to Washington and do the same thing. Can you imagine what kind of damage they can do to this country with the amount of damage that they've done to our state? We cannot send these people to Washington. We absolutely cannot. So make sure you vote. August primary, November, lots of voting. One of my big platform pieces is public safety. So taxes and inflation, public safety, and parents' rights. And Christina spoke to this a little bit while she was talking. I am grateful, by the grace of God, to have celebrated 13 years sober this year. And thank you. And in a state where we have the highest rate of drug abuse, okay, Vermont has the highest rate of drug abuse in the country. Those same representatives that currently hold elected office here, they want to add safe injection sites. So we already have seen the highest increase in overdose deaths in the country, highest increase in suicides too, I believe. But now we're gonna just say, hey, come shoot up in this government-funded place? That is unconscionable to me. People do not need us to enable them to do more drugs. What they need is the support and the structure to get sober, to get clean, and to put their lives back together. And so when I heard about Christina's record originally and everything that she had done and working with people in highlighting the need and prosecuting drug traffickers, doing a documentary with the fella who is in recovery, that is the kind of stuff that we need. You know, my husband and I, one of our one-bedroom apartment, we have set up as transitional housing for a new place and a couple of other sober houses in near Burlington. And those are the kinds of things that we need. We need human beings to be able and willing to support other human beings when they choose to get sober. One of the worst policies I think that we have here, at least in Burlington, is that if you're mentally ill or drug addicted, we tell you that living on the street is okay and a good option. Now, we don't want to criminalize drug addiction, right? I don't know anybody who's like, yeah, let's lock them up forever. But if they're committing crimes, if they're harming themselves and they're harming others, then they need to be arrested. And I can tell you from personal experience that getting arrested was what interrupted my drug addiction and caused me to start making a change. I am grateful every day for the consequences of my decisions because they remind me what's at stake. And it's my life. It's my life and it's my freedom. And we don't encourage people into that level of sobriety and that level of change by saying, you know what, it's cool. Just lay there on the ground in your filth, in your mental illness. Keep hurting yourself. That's mercy. We're giving you mercy by letting you stay there on the street. I don't know about you guys, but that's not the Vermont I grew up in. That's not what I thought has ever been okay. We need community. We need one another. But that also means making sure that people are held accountable for their actions. So we don't have people having unfortunate run-ins and circumstances with police officers. How about that? How about we fund police, get them some training, and then we don't let sick people stay on the street so that they hurt themselves and others and then have a police interaction? Call me crazy, okay? Call me crazy. That's how we used to do things, and it used to work. So that's what I would like to see. That's what I would like to see happen. Inflation, taxes. This is everybody. Anybody that was paying attention knew that this inflation spike was coming. Okay. Remember, I told you I'm an accountant. I do math. When you double the money supply in a short period of time, it reduces the value of the money that you have. So all of my folks out here who are maybe living on a fixed income with a pension, a retirement, your retirement is now worth less, thanks to the choices of the current and former administration. I know we don't like to talk about it, but these crazy, outrageous bills weren't just under Biden. Okay, this has been happening for years now. Our Congress decided that it was okay to spend outrageously, to borrow money from countries with atrocious human rights abuses that hate our guts. Why would we choose that? That doesn't sound like we're making very good choices for homeland security, okay? All I know is if we're dependent on foreign countries for our oil and we're dependent on foreign countries for money, that means inherently we are not safe. Those are poor choices that put the United States in a very bad position. We need to make better decisions than that. We need to cut spending. Nobody likes to talk about that, but does anybody else read Rand Paul's annual Festivus? Am I the only one that reads this? No? Okay. Rand Paul's a senator. He's a U.S. senator, and he puts out a report every year around Christmas time or the first of the year, and it's called the Festivus. And it is a list of all of the nonsense, well, not all of it, the worst, atrocious things that our federal government spends our money on. Millions and millions and millions of dollars on the studies on the viscosity of ketchup, okay? What happens when you give pigeons cocaine? If you think I'm kidding, go read it. Okay, I mean, literally. Do we need to know what happens if pigeons are high? I still am at a loss for how that helps anybody. But maybe they have something. I don't know. Maybe they're like, we need carrier pigeons and they just need to fly way faster. I don't know. And the third piece, biggest platform piece, is parents' rights and school transformation. I've been saying school choice, but the more I hear from people is we really just need a major overhaul to our education system generally. Everyone that I know in education has told me that the federal Department of Education continues to make things harder and worse, that they are proposing initiatives that are not good for students, that No Child Left Behind has left every child behind. We see that the Vermont Department of Education, we've lost 30% of our students in Vermont over the last several years, and yet costs are continuing to go up. How is that? We were told that if we consolidated school districts and we did this new crazy calculus, this crazy calculus math, that we would then have equity across our schools. Again, I said it earlier, I can tell you that Burlington schools the students are not meeting proficiency. We're spending the most per pupil in the country, and we're not even close to any of the top schools. I don't even think we're in the top 1,000, but we're spending the most. and having worse outcomes. Children are not able, again, they're not meeting proficiency. Burlington High School is only graduating 75%, something like that, for $20,000. And now they want $200 million for a new high school? The folks, people, what choices are being made? Are these really the people we want making health choices and education choices for our children? I don't think so. I think that parents and residents of communities need to have more say and more understanding, more transparency in what is being taught at their school and what's going on in the classroom. So those are three of my big priority pieces. But I will also say, I'm a constitutional conservative. And what that means is I believe that the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights are three of the most important documents ever penned. The Bible's pretty important, right? There's some other pretty important documents. But the United States Constitution and the documents that go along with it have created the most liberal and free society that the world has ever seen. And I know we don't like to talk about that as Republicans or conservatives, that our Constitution is liberal, but the reality is it is. It is set up so that each man and woman, person, can make their own choices, protect themselves, protect their families, protect their property, and make sure that they're okay. That is very unique. That is a very unique constitution, given that so many other countries, constitutions or founding documents say, no, you're going to do what the state says. Your rights don't come from just being born a human. Your rights come from us, the government. Okay? In other countries, the person, each individual, is much smaller than the government is. And in the United States, it's supposed to be the other way around. We, the people, are the most important in the structure of governance. We are to be self-governing. We are responsible for participating, for voting, for being part of the committees and the commissions and contributing and vote and running for office, helping with campaigns. That is our responsibility. So if we, as conservatives, want to maintain our rights for self-protection, want to maintain First Amendment rights, those are actually very libertarian, very liberal things. And what we're seeing from our opponents is very illiberal. They believe that they know better how to run your life. They believe they know better how to run your business. They believe they know better how to raise your kids, care for your family, help your elders with aging and making sure that they have the health care they need. And I just don't believe that. I believe you can make the best decisions for yourself and your family. I believe you know best what you need for your kids and for the people in your life. I believe you will be a better steward of your labor and your resources than the federal government or even the state government of Vermont. And so some things that I will be pushing for, some bills that I will do my best to get passed, and I already know some folks that I will be looking to team up with. One thing is going to be term limits for federal officials. Definitely worth clapping for. My libertarian friends hate it when I talk about term limits. They're like, well, if people want to vote forever for the same person, then let them. And I'm like, no. And I don't just mean for the legislature. Why has Dr. Fauci been in charge of the NIH for what, 40, 50 years? He doesn't even have a good history with other diseases and pandemics in the past. How does he still have a job? And how does he make $500,000 a year? He makes more than the president. Yes, I heard a tisk somewhere. I know, isn't that outrageous? We pay that man's salary. That is crazy. So term limits for everybody. I will also seek to have a balanced budget initiative. So no more black card for the federal government. where they just get to take out debt from whoever. We're gonna actually preserve the debt limit, and as we pay down the debt, we're gonna lower the debt limit. Because there's no reason the federal government should have as much access to your labor as they do. For all Bernie Sanders talk about labor, you should have the fruits of your labor. That was a terrible accent. I failed that. But Bernie Sanders talks about like labor all the time, right? You should have the fruits of your labor, corporate, terrible people. And yet he believes, actually, he is entitled to your labor. He believes you owe the government more of your hard work. You don't deserve it, he does, and he can do better with it than you can. And he tells us that every time they raise taxes and raise initiatives. Another big item that I will push for is one topic, one bill. One bill, one topic. So no more of these 10,000-page omnibus spending packages where nobody's read it and you have no idea what's in it, and oh, we gotta wait till we pass it to find out what it's gonna cost and all that stuff. No more. One bill, one topic. Every American should be able to go on some kind of website, see what the bill is, understand exactly what it means, how much it's gonna cost, and whether or not their legislator voted for it or not. We need to keep people accountable. We need transparency. I feel like I covered everything that I had notes that I wanted to share. I have a website. It's ericka.redic.com. Please take a card outside. Everyone spells my name wrong. Both names. It's kind of a nightmare. I joke and I was so excited when I got married because my maiden name is Bundy. See, I was waiting for the laughter. I was so excited. I was like, I'm never gonna have to listen to anybody tell a stupid joke about my last name ever again. And then I got married to a Redic who also spells his name differently than every other Redic in the country, basically. So please take a card and go to the website. On the Connect page, you can sign up for the newsletter where you will get to we'll keep in touch with you. We send about one a week, one every 2 weeks, let people know what events are coming up, what we're up to. There's a link to donate. There's an address at the bottom if you don't like donating online. But another great way that you can support me is to subscribe to my Facebook and YouTube channels. It's called Generally Irritable, because I am generally irritable when I'm talking about politics. And I started it a few years ago as a way to educate my fellow Vermonters, neighbors, and Americans about stuff that is going on. So almost every Sunday, live at 7 p.m., we have a guest on who's gonna teach us something. We're gonna talk about something that's going on in the state or something that's going on around the country so people can have a better understanding. So a couple of weeks ago, my guest was author Joe Sirio, who investigated the Russian mafia. And so he came on, talked about his book, and also shared his experience working in Ukraine and Russia, and gave some backstory to what we're seeing go on now. And so there's probably hundreds and hundreds of videos at this point of me talking about any given topic. There's some rants about people like Sarah George. If anybody knows, she's the Chittenden County State's attorney who doesn't prosecute murderers. Didn't you prosecute somebody because she wouldn't? Was it murder?
It was attempted murder.
Yes.
It's just by the grace of God, it wasn't murder. It's attempted murder.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like a rant about how she's got to go. People seem to like it when I get all fired up and talk some smack. There's also some comedic shorts on there because I've been trying to find a way to make politics relatable and accessible to people who just are so sick and tired of all of the nonsense, all of the aggrievement politics that we're seeing. It's just everything is salacious. Even our team lies about stuff and is salacious about everything. And so you're just like, come on, you guys, can we just be reasonable? Can we just tell the truth? Can we just let people know what the facts are and let them make their own decisions? That's why my campaign slogan is rigorous honesty. because I'm always going to tell you the truth as I know it, what I know, and I'm always going to do my best to give you a real answer when you ask me a question. There may be a time when I really don't know the answer, but one of the most infuriating things is when politicians dance around and don't tell you what they really think. I think you deserve better than that. I trust you to make good decisions for yourself, and I trust you to make good decisions for your family. And so I ask on August 9th for the primary that you vote for me, and then in November as well. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and I'm not satisfied with the daughter. My name's Clark. I'm from Bennington. I actually grew up in the North Country. I know it's a little late, but one of my greatest joys as a child was coming through Vermont to see all the neat things. And my wife and I finally retired after many years of corporate medicine and seeing the world of the military, because it's a great place to be. What I find most disconcerting to me is the combination of intelligence and federal law enforcement entities becoming arms of suppression and vindictive behaviors motivated by political stances. And I know you haven't been a U.S. attorney. Hopefully we'll be able to get a handle on this and bring people to justice, literally, those people who have betrayed their oath in the American people. I haven't heard anyone been held accountable. The last thing I want to do is sit in front of a judge or tell a lie under oath, but it seems to be perfectly acceptable for the police and the intelligence state to do this.
So, thank you for the question. I think your concern is with law enforcement being politicized. And I have to tell you, being the top law enforcement officer in Vermont, as I was, there is nothing more important than being totally above politics when you're a law enforcement officer. And you can never let any impermissible consideration, like your personal politics, come into play in law enforcement. So if there are investigations that can be done in the Congress about any kind of crime, anything that needs to be gotten to the bottom of, nobody knows how to do it better than me. I will get answers. I will get to the truth. Put me on every search commission, because what I did, not just as U.S. Attorney, but even more so as an assistant U.S. Attorney, is work hand in glove with law enforcement to investigate crimes. I had a case that meant a great deal to me that was a murder case. Young man, a college kid, murdered in Burlington. Nobody knew what happened. The state prosecutors didn't have the resources to investigate it. We adopted it at the U.S. Attorney's Office. We worked for months and months and months to solve the mystery of who killed this man, and we did. And his mother can have peace now because the murderer is in jail for 25 years. But my point is, sir, no matter what the questions are, when we have outstanding questions, when we feel like we're not getting answers, I have every confidence that there's nobody better situated than me to do an investigation in an apolitical way. I'm tired of these investigations that are politically slanted. They should be bipartisan. Again, bipartisanship is important. I believe we can restore it. When it comes to rooting out misconduct, we should be bipartisan. Put me on every search committee, and I'll get you the answers.
I love that. And funny enough, I was going to say the same thing about being an auditor, that it is your job to go figure out where the problem is, where the weaknesses are, and how to fix it. And I can tell you, I have been very disturbed by what we have seen from the three-letter agencies the last several years, well, especially the last 4 or 5 years. When you find out that does everybody remember the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan? Maybe you didn't hear about it. It ended up being FBI agents who were the primary people organizing it. You had a couple of guys who were probably not well, who then had FBI agents be like, oh, look at these guys are going to do something wrong. Let's entrap them. They are going after their political opponents and ruining their lives. We cannot. The rule of law is the one thing that this country has above all other countries. It's why if you ask international business people, because I have, They will tell you that the United States is by far the best place to do business, and it's because of the rule of law. You don't have to bribe officials to get permits. Well, I mean, unless you live in Burlington. You don't have to bribe officials to get permits. All of these things, right? There's not normally cartels running all of the agencies. We don't have, by and large, our industries are not nationalized, so you're not having to go through all of these things. And so if we don't have the rule of law, if we can't trust that everyone is treated equally in the eyes of justice, we don't have a country anymore, that's probably being hyperbolic. But in all seriousness, if we can't feel safe, if we have to be afraid of the law enforcement bodies, that's a big problem.
Can I just add one thing to that, just an addendum? So the three-letter agencies, I can't account for the conduct of every agent or for every agency head, but I can tell you that the three-letter agencies in Vermont, the DEA, the FBI, the ATF, Homeland Security Investigations, Custom and Border Protection, every three-letter agency, the people I worked with were of the highest ethics, totally apolitical. And we need to understand that while you can have questions about leadership, the rank and file law enforcement in Vermont and across this country are good people who are trying their best. And we got to be careful about broad brushing them, because they're putting themselves on the line every day, and their families don't know if they're coming home at night. And I do want to say, hopefully I can get through this. The head of the DEA in Vermont just took his own life. And this is very public information. He's a former Marine. I worked with him so closely when I was U.S. Attorney. And this is a guy who always showed up, and he always tried to do the right thing. And he put himself and his people in danger every day. And we don't talk enough about law enforcement suicide and law enforcement wellness issues and how many we're losing in the line of duty. And I just want to, in his honor, thank our federal law enforcement agencies and our state and locals for what they do. Please don't elect my opponent, who has voted 3 times to defund them. This is not good for their morale, and it's not good for their well-being. So I'm not saying anyone's responsible for that man's death. I'm saying we've got to support our police officers.
Yep.
We've got to do it.
That's so. I don't know if you can speak to this. Isn't law enforcement like the most likely to take their own lives?
I'm sure it's a high.
I think actually law enforcement officers are the most likely to commit suicide, and I mean that's unconscionable to me.
Hi, my name's Kathy Wagner, and I'm from Sandgate, and this is more of a cultural issue. And I had an athletic career, and I'm very concerned and upset about allowing biological males who now claim to be females competing against women. And if this had happened during my time, I would never have had any possibility of the success that I did have. And I would like your feelings and, on this issue, which is pretty important now.
Yeah. This issue is very important, and it's one of those ones that if you answer incorrectly, you're every istophobe in the book. But I want to just say, I'm very grateful to have been born a woman. I was born with a superpower, okay? I have the ability to grow life inside my body. I then have the baby and then feed the baby with my body, okay? That is a miracle of nature or God, whatever. I say God, but nature, the universe, whatever you want to call it, okay? That is a miracle. And I can definitely understand people's desire and feelings and and whatever emotional, biological things that they're dealing with that makes them want to present as a different sex than they were born as. And I believe that they should have all the rights and privileges that every American deserves. They should be treated with dignity and respect and kindness, just like everyone should be. but I don't believe that should be done at the expense of women. I think that we have to be very careful when we start to say that certain classes of people are privileged above others and should have special consideration taken for them. I think that we need to make public policy and law on the rule and not the exception. And sometimes that means people get left out, and sometimes people do not get to have all the same opportunities as other people. And that is a bummer, and that is really hard. But women have fought incredibly hard to be treated equally and with dignity, to have equal rights and equal opportunities. Women and girls, like boys, need things like competition so that they can learn to lose gracefully and win with integrity, so they can learn how to use their bodies, so they can understand, like, there's so much that you learn from being in competition and playing sports and things like that. And the idea that there are going to be people who have the ability to overcome the rest of their competition because they were born differently, I'm just not okay with. And I do not believe that biological males should be allowed to compete in sports with biological females.
So I think this is a women's rights issue, and I don't think we can have biological males competing with young women or women. I think that it's so important. I was an athlete growing up, and track, cross country, basketball. I cannot tell you how important it is for particularly for young women, but women of all ages, of course, to have sports in their lives. It teaches them teamwork. Teamwork is the most important thing, one of the most important things you can possibly learn. Nothing can be accomplished alone. We have to know how to work together, and that's part of my whole theme of my campaign. You've got to be able to work with other people and stop expecting them to agree with you on every issue, and if they don't, you're going to hate them. So they need their sports for teamwork, they need it for confidence, they need it so that they can learn from failures. You're not always going to be successful in sports, but you got to learn to bounce back, just like you have to do in your career. If we want women to smash glass ceilings, like they said I did as U.S. Attorney, we need to give them their sports, because that's going to be a platform from which they'll learn so many life lessons. And it's also just exciting and a fun part of childhood. Let's not forget about childhood and how important it is. I feel like we've lost the importance of childhood a bit during COVID. But I'll tell you something else, because I don't think this, so that's my position. But I also, not only did I do sports growing up, I was gay. And I was the only one that knew I was gay while I was doing those sports. And we cannot have people feeling ostracized. Transgender is real. We cannot have these people feeling ostracized. They need to be accepted, embraced. And this is something where we've got to figure out a solution, because I want them to have sports too. And so I don't know if it's a third kind of competition. Put me on this thought group too when I get to the Senate. And we can figure out a way where people can feel respected, loved, not ostracized when they can talk about who they are, because I can tell you, it's not so fun to not be able to talk about who you are. And when I say that, that's putting it lightly. It's scary to be alone and not have anyone to talk to and feel like you can't do sports and feel like nobody understands you. So we've got to balance this whole thing, and we've got to respect these folks. Now, I was up at the campus at Burr and Burton today. What an experience that was. I spoke to the 850 person assembly, spoke to the government class. These young people are so engaged, and these young people all identify different ways. But I have never, in all my campaigning, and maybe even as U.S. Attorney, spoke to a group of people who were more respectful, more receptive, more engaged, more hopeful. Please, if you're ever feeling not hopeful, please go talk to a young person, because they're still hopeful and they're still idealistic. And it's so invigorating to talk to them. And I visited the LGBTQ plus group, and I'm going to tell you right now, right from the moment I started in the assembly, I said I'm a Republican. And I said it to the smaller LGBTQ plus community. They want to hear about my views. they weren't pushing me away at all. I wish that we could have the kind of mutual respect and civility that I saw on this campus, where we listen. We don't all have to agree, but we listen, we respect each other. I wish that we could see more of that in Washington, what we saw on this campus today. So we've got to... So I don't think that I think women need to have their sports. It's a women's rights issue. I obviously feel passionately about women's rights. I think it's so important for young girls to have sports. But we also have to find a way to protect our transgender children, encourage them to be who they are, and give them sports too. And there might be a middle way here.
I was a high school varsity referee for 40 years, so I know what you're talking as far as the sports and girls and all that. But my question is on abortion, and I would love to know how you girls feel about women's rights and what you feel about the men stepping in and using it as a platform for themselves, when I don't think they have really any right to even vote on it.
Do you want me to go first?
Well, I'm going to ask a clarifying question. When you say there are people using it as a platform, do you mean candidates are?
Not so much the girls. I mean the men. The men seem to. I really don't know what their thought process is on this. We don't tell them what to do with their bodies. It seems like they stand up and they have a lot to say about what we're going to do.
Okay.
Without walking the walk.
Do you want to go first?
I can. I think it's a great question. I think abortion is, so the question is, you know, what do we think about abortion, and especially men having an opinion about it? Well, I first just want to say, you know, there's no other thing that we say that one gender is allowed to have an opinion on. We don't say that men are not allowed to have an opinion on murder or robbery or anything else. I believe that abortion is a moral issue. And to say that one gender, especially given the fact that they are one of the parents of the child that is created with sexual activity. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the news channel here, but what's PG? But the natural outcome of sexual intercourse is a baby. That is biology. And I don't know why there is an argument about this personally, because that is biology. That is the function of having sex. And so to say that one of the parents does not have the right to have an opinion about that, I think is wrong. I do appreciate the sentiment, though. I know a lot of women feel like, well, if men can just leave and not take responsibility for the child, well then I want the ability to have an abortion because I want to be able to walk away from the pregnancy as well. And I think that's a mistake. I think everyone should be responsible and accountable for their actions, whether it's the man or the woman. And this is a very hot topic. We have to be very careful how we answer, because the reality is, if we answer one way, if we try to be delicate for the camera and for the audience, conservatives hate our guts for it, and they think, you must love abortions. But if you say you're pro-life, well then anybody moderate and in the middle hates you because, oh, they're gonna take away abortions, okay? And so we're stuck. And I've gotten so much crap for trying to give delicate answers, so I've decided to stop giving delicate answers. The truth is, I am pro-life. And I am that way because of science. Because I have learned that basically within 6 weeks, you have a fully formed human being that is its own person. It has its own DNA, it has its own blood type, circulatory system, heartbeat, etc., and so forth. Now, the reality is that something like 60% of Americans think that there should be no regulations in the first trimester. And so I think anybody who is pro-life, hear me now. It is your responsibility, along with mine, to persuade people that they should make a different choice. The American people, by and large, believe that abortion is okay. And so we need to do a better job of persuading them that that women who get pregnant unexpectedly, who feel like they can't be a mother, that they have other options. So as an example, in the state of Vermont, we give $1 million to Planned Parenthood. We give it $0 to pregnancy resource centers. Does that sound like a choice? Does that sound like Vermonters are pro-choice? No, it sounds like we're pro-abortion. That if you get pregnant and you don't want it, just have an abortion. And I think that that's wrong. I think in the state of Vermont, we should do a better job of providing actual options, making sure women know that they have choices, that they know that there is health care and pregnancy resources centers that will help them. And then we also have to do a better job of rehumanizing the unborn. These are not clumps of cells, they are human beings. And in Vermont, the unborn are denied personhood status. 85% of Americans agree that third trimester abortions go too far. And in Vermont, you can have an abortion up until the point of birth. I believe we have gone too far.
Right, but then where do you stand? Where do you consider life to start? In heartbeat doesn't even start until the 6 months.
In 6 weeks. Life begins at conception. And any scientist will tell you that. Life begins at conception. We as Americans have decided that that life is not valuable until a certain point. I believe that life begins at conception.
So I do believe the Republican Party is the big tent party, and there are really a diversity of viewpoints in the Republican Party. I'm going to articulate a different view than Ericka, somewhat different anyhow. So first, let me say I want women, as a woman, it's incredibly important to me that women have excellent health care, all women, and access to excellent health care, including birth control, mammograms, screening, testing, everything that they need. And we need community health centers in every county in Vermont, and everybody needs access to telehealth, which they don't have. I think COVID showed us that. Roe versus Wade is a 50-year precedent that people have come to rely on. But people need to understand it articulates a limited right, a limited first trimester right to abortion. I believe we need to respect, honor, and preserve that 50-year precedent and the limited right that it establishes. Now, what we have going on in Vermont and across the country is something very different. There is an effort underway to amend the Vermont Constitution to so that forever abortions up to the point of birth, 9 months, would be allowed. I am against that amendment. I am against late-term abortion. I also will tell you that there's a federal movement afoot by the extreme left-wingers in the Democrat Party to pass a bill that would, all over the country, if Roe versus Wade is overturned, have abortions up to 9 months right to the point of birth. I am not for that. Peter Welch is for he's okay with 9-month abortions. He's for that state constitutional amendment, again, right up to the point of birth. And he's for the federal effort to have abortion up to the point of birth. There are two competing interests going on. There's women's autonomy, which I care a great deal about, and then there's the question of life, young life. And I believe that when you get to the last trimester, abortion goes way too far. It's not consistent with the science, but I do believe we have a limited right, a first trimester abortion, that people have come to rely on in this country, that I actually am not sure Roe is going to be overturned. As a lawyer, it's been upheld once already, and I know what a draft opinion is. Maybe that draft opinion will become law. It never should have leaked, by the way. This is part of the denigration of the Supreme Court and the politicization. You know what I mean. part of what's happening to the Supreme Court is undermining the dignity of the Supreme Court, this leak and so many other things that are going on with respect to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, we should never pack the court. I'm totally against that. But I do believe in preserving the first trimester right, which people have come to rely on. And I do think the late term should be regulated. I would vote to against this constitutional amendment, and I would think we need to put regulations on late-term abortions. This is another issue. It's a hard issue. People feel passionately on both sides, and we need to respect each other, treat each other well, abandon the over-the-top rhetoric. Everyone is trying their best on this issue. They're acting in good faith. These are hard, hard conversations. That's where I come down on it. It's different than some Republicans. But I just have to be authentic.